Hey everybody, this is Petey from Spinner Rack, and I'm doing this video. I've tried to do it a number of times. It's a hoopla on something that could possibly coming to the theaters. Been hinted at many a times because it's definitely an MCU character came out and a connection to this character, but at the same time, it's going to draw you similarities of something that you've heard before. So, what property um, had a 12-issue arc that caused that had very dramatic ending, had the history, backup stories had the history of these characters, all into a buildup of this 12-part story, leading to the loss of one of the major characters in the book. And it's not the Watchmen, because I said MCU, it's the Alpha Flight. I've been trying to do this for you guys for a while. There's been many videos about the Alpha Flight. Many, semi post Alpha Flight criticisms saying it's not a team book, blah blah blah. We were supposed to get a team book and we didn't get a team book, and this, that, and the other. So to get this out to you and go through the history of the Alpha Flight, which I guess is kind of, I've been doing this Zoom thing for a while, so I guess we're going to keep trying to do this. Before we do this, let me not do that yet. But the Alpha Flight was a book with characters created by John Byrne, and then also with the Alpha Flight, you don't just have these characters created by John Byrne. You have this connection to the X-Men characters. Now, to give you the initial assessment was to be the first domino that leads you to the Alpha Flight, because I'm all over the place, because Carol Danvers in the comic books is connected to the Alpha Flight. Many different things have happened to the Alpha Flight over the years, but I don't want to get to what they became. I want to get to what they originally were and how they became this popular team, or something that people just go back to from time to time. So let's go to what would we do? Let's go and share, as I've been doing for a while now. So if I'm sharing with you the one of the earliest Marvel Canadian characters, which is Wolverine. Now Wolverine is introduced in the Hulk 180, 181, 182. He's sent out, and he, of course, takes on the Hulk and the Wendigo. And this is a really good story. I know people kind of look at it and they're just like, they don't really understand, because it's not just a all-out brawl between Wolverine and the Hulk. But they did it sort of right, because they sort of said that, hey, this Wolverine character, is he strong enough to deal with the Hulk? And then ultimately in the story, he's not. But I'm getting into too much of this stuff. But ultimately, this is his first appearance. And then later he would be introduced in the X-Men. So since we're talking about the X-Men, we can go to one of my scans, which of course are my Get Course scans that I have. And then you have to introduce, since Wolverine was introduced as Weapon X, they have Weapon Alpha, who would be sort of the first character, but this is introduced because Wolverine talks about James McDonald Hudson as a friend, almost a brother, that Wolverine was better than, but the way Chris Claremont scripts it, that he sort of came second, even though he's Weapon Alpha, but he's also called Vindicator. So this is a fan character created by John Byrne, and he created this character. The character almost appeared in, Almost appeared in Captain America, but ultimately Dave Cockrum had an idea saying, hey, someone from Canada should come back and try to get Wolverine, since they spend all this money on him. And then Chris Claremont said that to John Byrne, and John Byrne added this character, and basically they made more Chris Claremont at this period made a story around it. Wolverine gets beat the hell out of, and basically Vindicator has to leave. So with that, your intro, he says at the end, I'm bringing the Alpha Flight. So since you see Alpha, Weapon Alpha, Alpha Flight, and that's, I think, something else that Chris Claremont sort of gave to the Alpha Flight. Now this part of the creation is normal for Marvel characters, even though Chris Claremont given a name or something like that. ultimately the creation would be to Byrne, even though I think Disney looks at it differently as far as who first wrote the character. But there's aspects that I think Byrne gave um, Chris Claremont the name Legion for David Howler, Xavier's son. So the things that Marvel were kind of, they're very loose as far as this sort of thing. So it was, while they were publishing it, the creation part went to basically John Byrne. So since he said that the Alpha Flight would be coming back to get him, basically when the X-Men, they're globetrotting, they go into Canada, and this 120 and 121, they meet the Alpha Flight. So I think the next cover has all the characters, but you have, no, this only has 3. So let's quickly go through this issue. I'm going to get introed into the Alpha Flight. Now the Alpha Flight has Vindicator, you have Snowbird, you have Sasquatch, Shaman, North Star, and Aurora. And they've kidnapped Wolverine and Nightcrawler. And this leads to, of course, a big brawl between the X-Men and the Alpha Flight. Now, the X-Men sort of win this fight, but there's some threads that are carried through this thing. Now, if I'm going to go back a little, is that another issue before this? Yes, of course it is. So in the issue before this, we get to meet the Alpha Flight on the bottom of this page, which is their real identities and their real names. And, you know, we get to see Walter Lankowski as a doctor, but at the same time, or like it was the, says he's a biophysicist. So then when we get to this issue here, you have them, and Byrne says he basically created these guys. They're basically all his fan characters. I mean, everyone knows this stuff, but he also sort of put together this team that could survive a fight with the X-Men. So you have strength against strength, you have flight against flight, you have, and those basic matchups. And of course, Byrne mixes it up a little bit more than that. This lands in a stalemate, but one of the threads that stay with the characters is that Shaman creates a storm in Canada that he loses control, and then Storm has to fix it. But this is something that Byrne doesn't forget going into the next series. There's a couple other things that happen. So let me escape from this for right here. We meet the Alpha Flight. Sasquatch appears in the Incredible Hulk annual, and this is just a straight up fight. Since Sasquatch has hinted to have copied his sort of do everything like Bruce Banner in a controlled experiment, he still has the mind of Walter Lankowski. He wants to test his strength against the Hulk. And one of the things he's surprised to find out that the Hulk strength increases as he gets mad, and he gets more, harder to manage. And this is really a tougher story because the Hulk and the girl there, she's kind of the victim, but at the same time, she kind of brings out the best in the Hulk. And ultimately, it's a sad story. It's a classic tragic Hulk story. So that's, they kind of are hinting, they kind of start appearing other places. So with that said, so then of course Sasquatch, he seems to be the favorite in the group. He appears in Marvel 2-in-1 Thing. Now, during this period of 2-in-1 Thing, the Thing just winds up going out and fighting characters. And it's basically who's stronger type of book. So he goes out and then they just have this test of strength type of thing. And then of course this leads to another issue of things that are going wrong, but I'm not going to get too far into that. Just to let you know, in the next issue, the rest of the Alpha Flight appear, and it becomes a big, big thing with all the characters. So as you keep going, only a portion of the Alpha Flight appear in Machine Man, but of course Sasquatch appears. And this starts a thread that Byrne would pick up also. But since not all of the Alpha Flight appeared in this, only certain ones, and going back to Wolverine only appearing, this sort of thread would mean that sometimes they work as separate agents, right? So all that said, let's see, where do we want to go here? At some point, no, let's go back to the X-Men. That's what we got with the Alpha Flight. Later in this issue, which is post Phoenix, the just Wolverine and Nightcrawler go to talk to the Alpha Flight, and we meet a major character in the Alpha Flight, which is Heather Hudson, which would be Mac or James McDonald Hudson's wife. And this is an odd thing. This is something that you wouldn't see in comics sort of today, where a normal character gets introduced. It doesn't get led into the fight at all. She just basically is a homemaker, you know, and Wolverine kind of comes on to her a little bit, and then the X-Men learn his real first name, and it's a human moment that we don't really see this much. Most of the time, Wolverine meets his friends in comics, and it's either Maverick, unless you're Archie Goodwin, where he let him meet a CIA operative. So this is one of my favorite scenes, and it leads to something in the next issue. But in this issue, you know, they meet the Alpha Flight, and they kind of get over some of the past stuff and bring up the Wendigo, so it ties in. Wolverine is cool with this. And of course, the next issue is a big knockdown, drag out fight with the Wendigo, with only a portion of the team, the Sasquatch and the twins are not there. So we have this thing where only the portion of the team that's needed kind of show up at this point. So at this point, I think they only appeared in the Fantastic Four for a hot second. So with that said, the Alpha Flight is kind of, I think there's a buzz around them, and their back issues are selling a lot. So when you go to, it's kind of hard to get those issues that I just showed you, because they're like maybe four, except for Machine Man. Machine Man is not that expensive, but at the same time, you're like, these characters are kind of buzzing, and I think Byrne had them under wraps. He wasn't ready to do a Alpha Flight book. Shooter was thinking about it. Some other people kind of pushing for it, but they were letting Byrne get the first crack at it. So ultimately, he finally gave in, like sort of towards his second year of the Fantastic Four. He relented, and he did an Alpha Flight book. So let's go to screen sharing, and we have Alpha Flight #1.